any other situation generally, comes a time when we start to ask a question. We start to ask a question of the true meaning of life. The true meaning of life. I'm just going to put a sticker here and then we dive into it, right? I'm going to ask a question and say, what is the true meaning of life? Right? Right, done. I'm just going to do that right now and put it there. Right, right. Let me just try to drag it maybe up to this point. Uh, True meaning of life. Done. And so what we have here is a situation in this scenario where there's going to be questions. There's going to be questions that we keep asking ourselves. And these particular questions seems like we cannot answer on a basic way. We cannot find the true purpose of life. You see, they can be asked with or without subconsciously knowing that we're asking them. But we do ask these questions. And so what I mean about this is the times when you spend sitting with yourself really and asking yourself without knowing that you're actually asking yourself to say, is this how life is supposed to be? Should I really be living my life the way that I'm living it today? Should this be the way that life is moving? Because honestly speaking, I'm tired. You get to the level of actually being tired because you're tired. You feel it in your mind, you feel it in your heart, and deep down you know that I am tired. And so you sit with yourself and you ask the question, should life be the way it is right now? And you start to slowly ask that question because you don't understand why life is moving the way it is moving. You're asking yourself this question not because you're stupid. You're asking yourself this question not because you are dumb, but you're asking yourself this particular question because you have an understanding that there must be something better than what I'm living right now here. And so these questions keep coming. It's a funny thing that you can feel it in your heart that there's something that is missing, but you do not know exactly what that thing is. It is something that the brain is fascinating me in a way to say, I know that I'm missing something, but I cannot point my finger in it. I cannot really be authentic about it and say, this is what is missing at this particular moment of time. And so you are still searching and you're still searching to have an understanding of what exactly it is that is missing. And so that is the reason why I'm saying there must be a true meaning of life. But the statement of saying what is the true meaning of life should not be, I do not know the English word that I should use, but it should not be a compulsory thing for each and every one of us. To say all of us right now, all of us right here have the same meaning of life. All of us right here have the same life that we need to live because our lives are different. Our lives can never be the same. The fact that we are not the same means that our lives can never be the same. Hello there, at Will. Hello, how are you doing? And so our lives can never be the same. And once they are not the same, the true meaning of life is not the same for each and every one of us. It is basically different for each and every one of us. And so we need then to have a conversation. If the meaning of life for me is different from the meaning of life from you, how then can I find the meaning of life for myself and basically for everybody? That is That is the question that we're asking. And so right here, as you can see, I have a notebook and I wrote down a few points. And as we continue with the live, I'm going to be adding more points as they're coming into my head. The very first thing that we'd like to talk about is the point of acknowledging God. Acknowledging God takes a lot of strain and stress away from ourselves. Because the moment we start to acknowledge God is the moment that we are indirectly saying, look, man, I'm not going to be able to answer every other question in this universe. I'm not, number one. And number two, I'm not going to be able to carry the load of the world on my shoulders. I cannot be able to do all these things because I'm acknowledging that there's a higher power bigger than myself. And that takes away a lot of strain, a lot of stress, a lot of confusion really in your mind, because now what you're doing is you're removing yourself from the picture and you're placing a God into the picture to say, okay, I understand that you are there. I acknowledge that you created me. That's the starting point of finding the true meaning of life, because if you are to understand life, you have to understand the origins of where this life came from. And so once we have the understanding of where this life came from, we are then in a position to go back to the originator of this life and ask him the purposes of why we are here. And so most of us are carrying burdens that in the truest of sense we were never supposed to carry. Most of us are doing things that in a way we were never supposed to be doing. And I'm going to tell you how you can identify this particular thing. Let me just read this comment from Iron Pink 1111. To live a happy and hopeful and amazing life. Pretty true. Thank you so much for that comment. But how do you reach a point of living that amazing life or living a hopeful, happy life? How do you reach that point? That is what we are trying to dissect into, because reaching the level where you are saying, okay, now I'm hopeful, I'm happy, and of course, it then automatically becomes amazing. It takes the elements of acknowledging the very first principle, the origins of life. And we have acknowledged that God is the creator of our lives, and God is the creator of all these things that we can see and the things that we cannot see. So once we have acknowledged that, we are then in a space now to move on to the next point, which is to go back to the one who started it all. Because remember, you were non-existent at one point. It's a fascinating point. At one point, the thought of you was not even there. The thought of you being alive was not there at all. You were not existing at all. And in the mind of God, you were there. But if we were to ask you 1,000 years ago, we couldn't ask you anything because you were not existing. I can explain this thing to the fullest of how I'm having it in my mind. Have you ever had that situation? In my mind, I know exactly what I'm trying to say, but the point maybe is not coming out the way I'm thinking it in my mind. You were non-existent at one point. So you did not have stress. You did not know emotions. You did not know how to be happy or sad. You did not know how to taste anything. You did not, you were just not there. But I would go on and say, you not being there was actually better in a way, because you did not have anything to do at all, no stresses at all. But God then placed you in this universe. Then placed you in this universe. And once he placed you in this universe, all of a sudden you know how to be happy. You know how to be sad. You know how to have these different emotions. And all of a sudden you have this roller coaster. One moment life is good, the next life is not good. The next life is like that, life is like this. It's all just coming together in a way that you did not think that life was going to to happen. And so you keep asking this God to say, oh God, why did you then place me in this universe? If you knew very well that life was going to be this hard, why did you place me in this universe? And that becomes the challenge that you're faced with, because now you don't understand the true meaning of life. You're just tired. You're always stuck in traffic. Traffic is your life, man. In the morning, early, you wake up early in the morning to catch the train or to catch an Uber or to catch, here in Africa, we use Amadex to catch taxis, to get to work, to get somewhere. In order for you just to have a glimpse at the end of the month of a salary, and that salary then becomes the livelihood of how you're going to live your life. But when you do have that spare time alone, which is very rare, because once you come back from work, you have to attend to the kids, there's a movie that you want to watch, and there's a cell phone, there are messages that you want to answer. There's just a lot that's going on. But somehow when you finally have that moment alone, when you finally have to say, I have finally had a moment alone, there's a question that you're going to ask yourself. There's a question that you almost always ask yourself. And that question says, is this how it was supposed to be? Is this how it was supposed to be? Is this the way that you wanted me to have? Because that then becomes a really detrimental question as you're moving on. Okay? Understanding that people are different. We're moving on to the next one. Hello there, hello, how are you doing there? Hope you're doing good. So the third point that we want to dive into, for those that will watch this on the later on date, is this fact of understanding that people are different. This is going to be important as we are moving forward. You will see why I'm saying this, because most of the dreams that we have are killed because, number one, of comparisons, right? We love so much to compare. Kill the ideology of comparison, because once you start comparing, you are placing yourself in a bad situation, because your journey is not their journey. They are living a different journey, which is different from the way you are living the journey at that particular moment. And so once you have the understanding that your journey is not their journey, you are in a space to actually have to stop the ideology of comparisons. No more comparisons. Your life that you're living is not their life. The life that you're living is your life. It is not how your brother is living. It is not how your mother is living. And so the understanding that our lives are different is critical, because we are different people in a different way, in a different universe, in a different space. We are completely different from how other people should look at you. So the moment you stop the comparison, the comparison disease, that's what I'm going to call it, you can have a life that's fulfilling, because you're no longer comparing your life to the life of the one or your classmates, for example. Others went to university, and after they went to university, their friends have actually gotten jobs, not just jobs, but good paying jobs. And these good paying jobs are just putting nothing but pressure on you, because now you start to compare. It is a natural phenomenon. It is a natural thing that people end up comparing. You just end up, you don't have a choice, but you end up asking the question, if I went to the same university with this guy, the same lecturer, the same aircon that was used in the varsity, the same exam room, the same papers that we wrote, and I passed just like he passed, why is it my life is hard and his is easier? Why is it that this education that I acquired has afforded to get this person a job and I still don't have a job at all? And then that you start to have that comparison effect, the comparison disease that is going to kill even the dreams that you have. And so that is what I'm trying to make. That's the point that I'm trying to make right now. comparison disease. It is killing a lot of us. It is indeed killing a lot of us. We need to just understand that. And then I'm just going to move on to the next point of the ideology of being too busy. With technology comes ease to getting knowledge, to getting, information is on our fingertips. Whatever you can think about right now, you can pick up your phone and you can just Google it. And it can just come out at that particular moment, there and there. So that is an advantage that we have. That is an advantage that we truly have, to say technology has brought about good in us. But at the same time, technology has also brought about a bit of curse. So it is a double-edged sword in a way that, in one hand, technology is very great, technology is very good, and technology is probably the best thing that has ever happened to us in the past 10 years. But on the other hand, it's also taking away the elements of peace, the elements of quietness that we used to have before. Because before cell phone era, before the internet era, people could work during the day and go back home. And after their home, the only thing that they could do was to face their families. They are talking to their spouses, they are talking to their children. At the dinner table, there's no cell phone that is there. They are really, truly present to themselves. And that was the life that they were living. But now, once you knock off at work, you have emails that can overlap. You need to answer some emails, you need to answer some WhatsApp messages. And finally, you have a time to scroll in your TikTok. You have your time to scroll on your YouTube. You have your time to actually look at different videos. And you are laughing alone with your phone. And all those things are happening. You don't realize, but it is happening, that you don't really truly have time with yourself. Number one, you don't truly have time with yourself, and you don't truly have time with the people that are around you. You can be living with your children, you can be living with your wife and your spouse, but you're not truly there with them. They don't know you really, because there's a gadget that is taking away your attention away from them. And if it's not a gadget, if it's not your cell phone, it is probably the laptop. If it is not the laptop, it's probably the television. There's one series to the other series. There's just too many things that are happening, and you don't truly have time. I'm complaining about you not having time for your family, but it is also important to notice that you also need to have time together with yourself. I know that English is a bit strange to say, but let me just try to explain it how I'm thinking about it in my head. You see, having time with yourself means to reflect. It means to take time to actually see how your day went. Others are still doing it by force, of course, they call it journaling. They're still doing it. But others, we're not doing it at all. You still need to have time alone to see the mistakes that you did during the day. Did I talk to someone in a way that might have not been liked by them? Because how many feelings are we destroying without us knowing? And did I do or act in some way that we don't have that time, so that tomorrow when we wake up, we are not going to make the same mistakes that we did on this particular day? That is one other thing that I want to really dive into deeply, because having time with yourself is the only time that God can actually communicate with you. Others were living in these cities that are always busy, whether it's night or day, these cities are busy. They don't give you the time. They don't actually give you any chance for you to be alone with your thoughts. That's the word that I was looking for. To be alone with your thoughts. I'm going to ask a question to say, why are we so afraid to be with our thoughts, to be with ourselves, some people just don't want to be with themselves. That's why they look for distraction in any way that they can get. You just cannot be with yourself, and you're always looking for distraction. You always want to be out. If you're not out, you always want to drink something that's intoxicating, so that your mind is not in the present. You cannot sit with yourself. You cannot do that. Why are we so scared to be with ourselves? We look for televisions. I look for a movie to watch because I just cannot sit with myself. I just cannot take that walk alone. I need headphones. I need music to distract you from actually having the thoughts with yourself. And that is the mistakes that we are currently facing. Why are we so afraid to be alone? Because in being alone with our thoughts, that is when God can truly speak to you. You know, Elijah, is it Elijah who had slaughtered those prophets in one day and he glorified God? He was like, you know what? If God is God, He's going to bring fire from up above and He's going to bend that thing, bend this burnt offering up. But if Baal is God, He's going to bring fire if you pray. And they failed to bring fire. You know, these people failed to bring that fire from above. The sacrifice was not bent. He stepped forward and he started to say, look, right now I'm going to pray to my God. And he did. And it was, one author says that it was before he even uttered a word to God that the fire had already came and consumed that particular offering, and glory went up to God. And, you know, he himself also was honored by God during that time. But when a time came, he had to run away. You know, they wanted to kill him. He ran away. And when he was sitting alone, my point comes to say, when he was sitting alone in that particular tree, praying to God to die, that is when God actually spoke to him. He spoke to him. He reminded him of where he took him from. But he was alone when this is happening. So power really comes when we are alone. When we are alone, that is when power truly, truly comes. And so that becomes the true meaning of life. That becomes the true, the true purpose of why you are here. And so to answer the true meaning of life, let's have a recap. Answering that question, the true meaning of life. Number one, we've established a point to say the true meaning of life is different for all of us. It is not the same for me as it is for you. And so once we start to have an understanding that that true meaning of life is different, we then act differently to find the meanings and the answers of what we need to be doing. Because I cannot be looking for meaning in a space, in a genre, in a niche that just doesn't fit my personality, just doesn't fit why God placed me where I am today. And so that then brings me to the next point to say, we all have differences. We all have our differences, and we all need to continue trying our level best to continue to reach a certain level. And so that is the first topic that we have been settled in this first 30 minutes, the true meaning of life. It is different for all of us. But the Bible says that He does not do anything without telling you, without telling you. That means that He has a way to tell you. He has a way of telling you, so he doesn't do anything without really telling you. There's always going to be a way. There's always going to be a way. Yes. In order for you to live a meaningful life, it can have signs that you can see, that you can point to, that will then make you realize that you're actually living a meaningful life. The very first sign that you can see is that once you're living a meaningful life, you are at peace. That's number one. You are at peace. You're at peace because there's nothing that is lacking at you. You know, you cannot be having enough money and yet you can be happy. That is a funny thing to in this modern world that we can face, but that is true. You know, once you are living a meaningful life, a purposeful life, it is not determined by how much you have in the bank. And as much as money is important, it is not determined by how much you have on your bank account. So I want to make that point very clear as we continue with our life, to say money has its place. Money has its place in happiness, you know, but it is not supposed to be the determining factor once it comes to the question of, am I living a peaceful, meaningful life, purposeful, meaningful life? So money is not equals to money is not equals to happiness. Number one, money is not equals to meaningful. Money is not equals to all of those things. It is important, but it should not be the determining factor of whether you are happy or you're not happy. And so once we're looking for the true meaning of life, I think our conversation need to be running away from money. The more that we talk about money, someone said to me, Christians are not wealthy. Why is it that when you're worshiping a God that made it all and yet you're not the wealthiest of people? I say that depending on how you define wealth, it is very important for us to have an understanding of how wealth is defined. Because if money was the determining factor of true meaning of life, if those people that had money we had arrived to say, I know the true meaning of life, they were not going to be able to have these suicidal thoughts that they have. At Veronica, hi there, hi Veronica, we were not going to have a case where we are saying these people actually kill themselves with all the money that they have in the bank account. So it is definitely not arriving at the scope of saying we found the true meaning of life once I have wealth. So I don't want you to postpone to say, I'm going to be happy once I have money. I'm going to live a happy life once my bank account is 6 figures. That becomes a mistake because we are actually failing to see that what is of importance is what we're about to speak about right here. What we're about to dissect into right here becomes more important than money. But don't get it twisted, like I'm saying to you. I know others will leave this life to say, you say that money is not important. Money is important. We all need it to live. We all need it to move from place A to place B. But my point is, it should not be the determining factor of why your life is a purposeful life or not. It should never be the determining factor at all. So, to find the true purpose of life or the true meaning of life, we have to understand that our lives are different, right? So once we start to understand that our lives are different, we are living in a space where we can now be independent in our thoughts, in our thought processes of how to dissect life, on how to move forward with life. We can then start to move in a certain direction, which is different from when we thought that our lives are the same. Because if our lives are the same, we are, you know, are you from South Africa? Yes, I'm Johannesburg right now. Johannesburg. I am from South Africa, Veronica. Where are you from? Where are you from? We, back to what I'm saying, we are basically saying this, right? We're basically saying our lives are different. So once they are different, we are not going to look for meaning in the very same exact way. Otherwise, if it was going to be like that, we were going to have a textbook for everyone. Glencoe, where is Glencoe? Where exactly is Glencoe? Is it Canada? So we were definitely going to have a textbook that says one size fits all. But people are so different, people are so unique to the extent that you can see that what makes me happy might not make you happy. What makes you happy might not necessarily make me happy. That those differences show what we are different in the way that we are, in the way that we live, in the way that we move. We're just different people. And so even our purpose in life, when we were created with different purposes. We were created with different meanings. We were created, just different. And so accepting that we're created differently allows us then to move and seek God in a different way. So we spoke about the importance of having quiet times alone. Sometimes I do cherish to move to the mountains just to be with myself, so that I can really, so that I can really get to a state of conversating with God, because God can speak to you in different ways. And when he does speak to you, he really wishes that you understand his purposes for you. And so, like I'm saying, the purpose is not for too many people. The purpose is basically for you. Challenge comes now when you know what you're supposed to do. But remember, there are communities around us. You are scared. You are so scared that if I'm to do what I need to do right now, what will people say? What will people say is a tricky one. DJ Spoo, one of our DJs here in Africa, said there's what we call what will people say syndrome. Abantu bazothini syndrome. Abantu bazothini syndrome is basically the kind of syndrome that you're so concerned about what other people are going to say, and to the extent that you don't do that which you're supposed to do because you're scared of what people will say. So that becomes a problem. Let me get a jersey. Abantu bazothini syndrome.